It's some 20 minutes after 7. That's Joseph Opoku Gakpo's documentary, Jungle Paul. Good morning, Joseph.
Mavi, good morning to you.
Yeah, what set you out to the jungles?
Well, the success story has been told largely, particularly about the Millennium Development Goals and the high marks that we had scored when it comes to meeting these Millennium Development Goals. They talk about the goals having to do with poverty eradication, which we've done fairly well with. In terms of monetary poverty, the goal having to do with achieving universal basic education, and even the specific goal having to do with environmental sustainability, which we've not done quite well, but indications are that when it comes to the provision of potable water, the statistics show that Ghana has done very well. The idea was to get to the ground, find out from the ordinary person how much they think that their life has improved over the last 15 years or so that the MDG has been implemented. And some of the stories that we found were mind-blowing, if I could put it in them.
Did you think or expect to see some of the things you saw? I mean, I saw the water they were fetching, for instance, to think that they walked all that distance to go and fetch that kind of water.
You walk and you follow them all the way to the stream. It took us like 30, 40 minutes to get there. So you walk that distance and get there and walk that same distance and back. So the young people, for example, they do this every morning to get water for their parents, and they do it every evening when they return from school. And because it's quite a distance away, as you saw, they go to the stream in groups. They don't go individually because you need to walk through a lot of bushes in order to get there. So for safety reasons and all of that, you'd have to do that. That community is called Achivi Corporation in the KJB district of the Volta region. And I was telling some colleagues of mine that when we set out, we're in a number of areas. We're in the Volta region, we're in the northern region. We started the trip from the Akachi area in the Volta region, and I was telling my colleague Samala Santi and the driver that I went to that the kind of things that we saw in the Volta region, I really didn't expect to see them in the Volta region, because when he spoke of abject poverty, the thinking was that the three northern regions were the most poor areas, and I was expecting that those kinds of stories, like people drinking dirty water like that and children having to walk long distances, I was expecting that we would see those kinds of real stories of poverty when we get to northern Ghana. Interestingly, that wasn't the case. We ended up seeing a lot of those stories in the Volta region and even worse stories when we went higher to the northern region.
We'll talk more about some of the things that you found, the shocking revelations, right after this. We're going to take a quick break. We're talking poverty on my banner this morning. At least 80% of humanity lives on less than $10 a month. More than 80% of the world's population also lives in countries where income differentials are widening. The poorest 40% of the world's population accounts for 5% of global income. The richest 20% accounts for 3/4 of world income. As part of efforts to reduce extreme poverty and ensure that the little riches reaches the man in the streets, the World Bank is partnering multimedia in a shared prosperity forum, which will be held on Friday, October 16, which is just tomorrow. In the course of this discussion, we'll also hear from children below age 15. What do they also understand by poverty? How do they think the problem can be fixed from their perspective? But in here is my colleague Joseph Opoku Gakpo, who's visited some regions, and it's
very interesting statistics you put out there. The point about monetary poverty and a lot of people being below that line. But here in Ghana, for example, for the documentary, we spoke to some economists, Dr. Sibe Yeboah. It will be part of the full part when it eventually airs, and he points to the fact that those statistics, people living on less than $1.25 a day, people living above that. Here in Ghana, for example, a lot of people have managed to cross that line. So they define that as the poverty line. Anyone living below that is poor. Over the last 15 years, a lot of people have gone above that in terms of how much they earn on a daily basis. But Dr. Sibe Yeboah points to what he describes as the socio-economic poverty, and he used another terminology for it, in the sense that you don't only define poverty in monetary terms, in terms of how much the person earns or spends on a daily basis. He points out that poverty should, or most of the times, is also defined in terms of how much access people have to the basic infrastructure, health, education, access to clean water and all of that. And the point is that if people are wealthy enough, they live on higher sums than $1.25 a month or a day, they'll be able to provide those basic needs like health, like education, infrastructure, and all of that. But unfortunately, although we are doing well in terms of dealing with what the World Bank and the international partners will describe as statistical or monetary poverty, when it comes to the real poverty, the real poverty in terms of the availability of all of those necessary infrastructure. Dr. Asibia, for example, estimates that there are about 40% of the population who don't have access to all of those basic infrastructure, and it's quite a worrying situation.
Yeah, because some of these things are beyond your individual reach. You can't build a school, for instance. You can't put teachers in there to teach.
Exactly.
You can't provide water.
Exactly, and government has to do all of that. But for example, for those in the city who live on, let's say, 1,000 Ghana cedi plus a month and all of that, when it comes to those basic needs, water, if water is not flowing through their taps, they would fall on a polytank. If they don't have electricity, they would fall on a generator. If the nearest school is even 30 minutes drive away, they'll get their children in vehicles and take them there. But the ordinary guy who is really poor and lives on that $1 a day, where does he get money to get a polytank? Where does he get money to get a generator set to get himself electricity? All of those have to be done by government, and when government neglects the population of the people, then their situation is even worse.
Tell you what, when I was watching this one that we showed, I was thinking, do the politicians go to these areas? Was it a question that you asked? Do they see them come to campaign? Particularly
at the community where the very final one, where they drink that very dirty source of water. The chief there, Togbi Shito Agbeve, that's his name, that's the chief of Achibi Copper. He was making the point that he thinks that government has neglected them because when elections are approaching, the politicians come around. They do? They go there? They do. They have parliamentarians there, so the parliamentary candidates get there, and some of the very top hierarchy within the political structure. Of course, they've not had presidential candidates visiting them, but they've had those lower the ladder visiting them, and they point to promises that have been made to them, that the community would get schools, the community would get health infrastructure, the community would get electricity, the community would get clean sources of water. And their point is that these promises have been repetitive to the extent that now they think that the politicians are deceiving them, except that they don't see any other means that they would be able to help themselves, because more like the cycle of poverty has been there since some of them were born into the communities. It's been the case. People there don't get good education. No one eventually steps out of the community and becomes a big man to then return and improve upon the community. So the cycle of poverty continues. People grow up there. Is
this a large community?
This is a community with a population of more than 500 people.
Okay.
And this community is very close to the Togo border. The Togo border is just about 10-15 minutes walk away, and so even for some of the very necessary infrastructure, health and all of that,
they have to cross
over to Togo to access health and sometimes even getting for those who are a bit rich, getting some of the petty things like meat and other things for their meals. They need to get into Togo to get some of those items. Unfortunately for them, even for the school children there, for example, they need to walk over 30-45 minutes to get to the closest school nearby.
I had a young boy and I was just saddened.
And he made the point that after walking all that while, they go to class and they sleep because...
But who wouldn't?
Having to walk all that distance in order to get to school. And so they don't do well in school. Beyond junior high school, then they are unable to continue. And that's the complaint about the cycle of poverty. No one is breaking through in the community, and so the cycle continues.
You visited the northing. You went to tell us about the specific areas that you went to.
Let's start from the Volta region. We were in the Akachi North District, a particular community called Nitavuta. That's the name of the community, one of the very deprived communities in the Volta region. Nitavuta, for example, again, this community has no access to the basic infrastructure, no electricity, no health infrastructure. The school there only ends at the basic level, primary 6. There is no clean source of water.
Is there a toilet facility?
There are no toilet facilities, so they do open defecation. There is no public facility for them to then ease themselves either. So they do it in nearby bushes, which then increases the spread of disease and all of that. So that's one of the communities we visited, the Akachi North district. We were then at Bojanu Toko, which is in the South Tong district. This community is right beside the Keta Lagoon. Again, all the basic infrastructure, non-existent. So, and this is the very interesting story about Bojanu Toko. They live by the lagoon, but the complaint is that the lagoon water is salty, so they are unable to do anything with it. So in order to get water, they use what they call the Kufor gallons, the yellow gallons. They carry them on boats and canoes and paddle all the way and enter into the Keta community itself. That's like 30-45 minutes away. So they carry the gallons to the nearby community, fetch water in the gallons, carry the water in canoes over the lagoon and bring it to their community to make use of. And they complain that sometimes when they are bringing it, then the boats get shaky, then the water they are carrying underwater gets drowned in the water. Pregnant women, sick persons also have to be carried in these boats over the water into the Keta municipality in order to get access to health care. And you just imagine it and you're like, oh, what kind of life is this? Young people need to get into that, the canoes, in order to get to school and all of that, which could endanger their lives. But they make the point that they don't have a choice. That's how they need to manage.
So young people still go to school irrespective of all these challenges?
They do. They try their best in order to really get to school. Like the young guy, for example, in Achibi Kope, who was making the point that he needs to walk over 30-45 minutes in order to get there. In the second part of the documentary, which will be shown subsequently, you will hear the interesting story from a community in the Nkwanta South district. This is a community where the school is not exactly under a tree, but the structure that they live in is almost under a tree, because all they have are tree stumps which are roofed with thatch, and that's what they're learning. There are no desks, so the children learn on clay blocks. You see pictures of that when the second part is them sitting on clay blocks. Some of them, the very worthy ones, have plastic chairs that their parents had bought for them. So and they use those plastic chairs at home. Those who are worthy. So they use those plastic chairs at home. So when they are coming to school, then they bring it along, and that's how they come to sit on. This community, for example, I'm trying to remember the name of the community. It's not community, like Nkwanta South District, but you show subsequently. And then the situation is poor. And my major concern has to do with the children, because once the foundation is weak, then they can never break out of the cycle of poverty.
It's true. But are these people happy? Did you feel happiness in them?
I asked them that question about what they think the future looks like for them, and whether they think that they'll really be able to break out of the cycle of poverty. You see, the point about them being happy, that's the kind of life they've lived all their life. And so they don't know what it's like to live outside, structures like that. So they don't know how life is like in a community with electricity where they have light in the night. So, they won't know how it's like to then tell you that would have loved that things were better. Yeah. They don't know what it's like to, drink from a clean source of water, or they drink is that dirty source of water. So they don't know how it's like on the other side.
So, we'll come back.
So they don't have a choice. They are happy.
All right. Let me bring this to attention. Our colleague Efua Akwa Harrison sat down with a few children. This is their perspective. Remember, we're talking about their counterparts who don't have the things that they do. It will be interesting to hear them. So that's what we bring to you now, and then we'll continue with Joseph Ubukugabo afterwards.
Here at the Christ the King International School to talk to some of our future leaders about what they understand by poverty and what they think about poverty. How do they feel about what Ghana as a nation is doing about this particular issue? And they will introduce themselves to us. Let me start with you on my left. Please tell us your full name and age.
Jasmine Kukwayati, 14 years.
Penelope Piajima, 15 years.
All right, so guys, tell me, what do you understand by poverty? Let's start with you, Peniel.
I think poverty is the intense lacking of something. Like you don't have something which you really need. To me, that's poverty.
Can you give an example?
Like people are poor, so they lack the money to go to school. So because of poverty, they lack education.
What about you, Jasmine? What comes to mind when you think about the word poverty?
I think poverty is, like he said, an intense lacking of something, but you try as much as you can to get it, but you don't really have the means to get it. That's what I think about poverty. Like something you try to get, but you're not there. You've not reached there.
So what about you, other Jasmine? What comes to mind when you think about poverty?
To me, poverty is lack of everything, even lack of water, lack of air, lack of health, and you can include money, but not everything about money. It's everything around you, not just money. So poverty is lack of everything around us, the environment.
So have you guys, what have you guys come across in your daily lives as poverty in Ghana? 57 years of independence, or 58 years actually of independence. How do you think Ghana is doing in terms of poverty?
I'll say if I were to rate 1 to 10, not even half. Because when you go to other countries, their placing of settlements, it just shows how they have revenue, they have generated their revenue, which is in connection to poverty or riches. And low sanitation, that is also in connection to poverty, in my view.
How is low sanitation in connection to poverty?
As I said earlier on, poverty to me is lack of everything, and they lack knowledge about cleanliness, and they make the surroundings around our country very bad, which drives investors away from us, and this affects us in several ways.
So you don't think Ghana is doing well when it comes to poverty alleviation?
No.
Why do you say that?
Well, they're trying their best, but I think they can do more.
For you, what is doing more?
Well, if Ghanaians are able to know what's right and do it, and if they are able to pay their taxes and stop shying away from it, then it will lead to development, and then we'll be seen as a country that is doing well, as in terms of poverty.
Jasmine, do you think Ghana is doing okay in terms of poverty alleviation?
Well, for instance, when people come to Ghana, like those who are not familiar with our surroundings, they are normally in the big cities, the ones with the buildings, Airport City, ShopRite, Osumo, those places. They don't really see the slums and all those settlements. They don't go into Ghana to see how we are. The investors think we're doing okay because of our big cities. They don't, like Sodom and Gomorrah, those places. They're not aware of those places. And government doesn't always delve deep into the people who need help. They don't. They just take a look at one part of the country and say everything is fine. Everything is going all right. They don't go to they don't go deep into Ghana. They just, so if they did, if they concentrated on everybody, I think poverty will be alleviated. Not totally, but there'll be improvements.
So for you, how would you rate improvement in terms of poverty for you?
How would I rate improvements? Well,
What would you have to see for you to say there's something being done about poverty?
Well, like Jasmine said, sanitation is an important factor for poverty. If our surroundings are clean, if the slums are cleared, and all of those places, if they become okay, then I would see that there's a lot of improvement. If there are more children going to schools, if there are less hawkers on the streets, then there's a rate of improvement in our country.
What about you, Penny? I'll add your voice to this discussion. How do you think Ghana is doing in terms of poverty? Is it all bad?
No, it's not all bad. Like, we are getting there, but we are not there. To me, that's how it is. We are getting there, but we are not there.
So what is there?
And just as they said, sanitation, education, infrastructure, employment, then I can say we've reached the level. One, this is from bribery and corruption. That's the main thing, bribery and corruption. They should be patriotic, love Ghana first. Ghana should be the first. Everything they do, they should stop and think about Ghana. What do Ghana benefit? My generations, my grandchildren's generation, what would they get from this? Then we can alleviate poverty.
You've heard about the World Bank coming in to give Ghana some aid, right? All right, and as part of that aid, they are of course going to give us certain rules and certain structures by which we are supposed to live by. One of those rules and structures is supposed to help Ghana ease poverty alleviation. Did it have to come to this? Does it take a body like the World Bank to come and say this? Or I guess the question is, why must it take a body like the World Bank to come and say this and that before we really work on alleviating poverty? Who wants to start? Okay.
I think for a body like the World Bank to come and help us, it means our case is really severe. It's really serious because we have ECOWAS. They see to the economic integration, but if we don't start with bodies as small, not small, but like closer to us as ECOWAS, and we jump all the way to New York, where the UNO headquarters is, it means that the case is severe. Like, we don't, poverty is in such a situation that it takes an important body like the World Bank to come to our aid. It means that we have to try harder to totally get rid of poverty.
I think they're just trying to show interest in our case because I don't think Ghana is the only country World Bank is helping. Well, Africa as a whole is being referred to as a country or a continent of poverty. But the question at stake is, are the leaders of a country ready to follow the rules or the principles that are attached to the help? Would they help in the improvement or development of the country? And is it in our favor? If yes, then fine. But if no, then I think we should eliminate it.
You mentioned that the continent is being seen as a place of poverty. How does this make you feel?
Well, to me, it's racism. I feel bad when I hear this because why is it that Africa on its own should be tagged as a continent of poverty?
I was just saying that why should we be considered as a poor continent, whilst most of the resources they use to develop their countries and continents come from here?
I agree with Peniel. They take the resources from us, they use it, yet they are not tagged as poor continents. They use it for their own development and tend not to give us anything in return. Now, when our resources are taken, our leaders do not, I would put part of the blame on our leaders because they do not really use or ask for much help from the other continent. And this also makes them, this is what gives them much more reason to qualify us as poor, because as I said before, we are poor in knowledge and everything. Okay, also, I would say that the country is poor because of improper use of our own materials. We have gold. The rate of selling for gold is really low. Now, if it is brought to a raise, or it's, yes, brought to a raise, and countries, a lot of countries are interested in this resource that we have, and they buy it, we would get more money to help develop the country, and then they can clear their thoughts of us being poor. Okay, so let's take gold for an example. The price given to it is very low. Yes, it is sold in a world market, but our leaders could find ways to add more value to the product to make it more efficient or more revenue generating.
Why do you think some people are poor and others are not?
I personally think that the difference between a wealthy person and a poor man is education. But once you're educated, you're on your own, you can fend for yourself, you can fight for yourself. You know how to fight for yourself, when to fight for yourself.
Well, Peniel, think about it, really. Is it all educated people that are wealthy? There are some people who haven't really been educated, but they are pretty well off, but they haven't gone to maybe formal school like you or I.
Well, we should know that education is not only in a school setting. The other forms of education, like I want to learn how to sew, so I go to a seamstress. I have the talent for sewing. I go to teach one tooth, then I learn it, sit back, set up my own shop, then gradually I progress to a next level, and I'm owning, let's say, a clothing line and getting money.
So you think it's the ability to want to learn other things and the opportunities you give yourself? Okay. What do you think poverty in Ghana will be like when you are my age? Do you think it will be better?
Yes, please. I think it will be better because we are now being aware of the current situation in our country. So we are going to school to find more good ideas to improve our country.
You, Jasmine?
I also think it will be the same because our leaders are aware, and us as the youth, we are more, not all the time, but we are somehow aware of the news that is going on. We are a little bit aware of the affairs going on in our country, so we would force and make, as they would say, make wild, and then learn hard so that we don't face the same thing our forefathers faced. And they also wouldn't want a situation for us to, what happened to them to happen to us, because they want us to live in better conditions. They don't want us to make the same mistakes they made, so they'll try and make the path better for us. They try and advise us and make sure that we're stable enough when we become their age.
Life on its own is a protest. That's what I have to say. Because before, from what I heard from my mom, the JHS level was 4 years, I think, yes. But now it's 3. And that's a change on its own. So I think by then, we would have gotten other ways to resolve the issue. First of all, the World Bank now has come to help us, which means most of our, or yes, let me say, most of our problems would come to an end. Secondly, we students or pupils are brought to schools to learn and to find ways and means to solving various problems the country faces. That is why we are being educated on it. We have social studies, RME, those subjects. So by then, I believe that most or majority of us would have thought of meaningful ways to resolve this.
Anything else you want to add? Final words.
Well, I know Ghana can do it, so just put my hope and trust in it.
Well, Ghana is a developing country. The part of it being developing means it to be developed. So we can only go, yeah, we'll get there.
To me, I think the only solution is to be patriotic. We should love Ghana. Then we'll be able to alleviate poverty.
So you've heard it from my young friends at Christ the King International School. They've been sharing their views on poverty in Ghana, poverty in Africa. Well, the great thing is that at least they have hope that Ghana will make it. I will end with my young friend Peniel's words that just be patriotic and we will alleviate poverty.
Hope is what we have, and I'm happy that these young ones have hope. We will get there. I like the analysis of it. Developing means we will be developed. We're getting there. But it's interesting, isn't it, that these are young people in Accra, and this is their analysis of what's happening in our country. I'm sure a lot of people probably not think about the extreme poverty like the pictures and the stories that you've been telling us. I mean, it's like something that used to happen in the past. Very few people would think is happening now.
Exactly, and it's quite interesting, as they say, Maslow's theory of needs. When you, for example, ask the young people in Nitavuta or Bojanutoko their perspective on poverty, they'll talk about those very basic things: lights, water, health, education, basic infrastructure, roads, and all of that. The kids at Christ the King, they have all of that, and so they will tell you about patriotism going forward. They will tell you about
debts,
environmental sustainability. They will probably tell you about more vacations outside Accra and all of that. So the perspectives are, obviously, you can expect that the perspectives would obviously be different. But hey, the point is that, and that's the sad part, the examination that they write at the basic education level, BEC, is the same. So that the guy in Bojanutoko who there is no electricity in the community, and so they've never had any practical experience when it comes to computer studies, will be writing the same BEC as the guy at Christ the King, and the marking scheme will be same. That's the unfair aspect of it. So the guy in the rural area is unable to go beyond that, and the situation that we end up having is the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. Who bridges the gap?
You spoke to some persons who seem to know how we can get out of this. We're getting some funding, even though other donors are running away, because the level where we used to be, that's not where we are. We are supposed to be, on paper, better. So we will not necessarily get a lot of aid like we used to get. But you've spoken to a few people who seem to know how we can
exactly,
get out of this.
and that's what the documentary sought to do. Beyond listening to the problem and watching the disturbing pictures, one more can be done. So we had conversations with the United Nations team, the resident coordinator. We had conversations with the NDPC, Kenneth Osu, who is a technical advisor, the economics, Dr. Siasibe, Care International's country director, and a few other persons shared various perspectives. The NDPC's technical advisor, Kenneth Osu, was, for example, making the point that available money for development has been dwindling over the years, particularly because we've reached the middle income status as a country. There is also concern about donor fatigue generally, and so available money from development partners is non-existent, the rich countries. Then there is talk about taxes locally, which also there is increasing demand from public sector workers. They want more money and all of that. Price of goods keep going up, and so the money there, for example, becomes non-existent. And Kenneth also, for example, is of the opinion that if we really want to deal with poverty, It's about attracting money from the private sector to help with development, not from donor partners, not exactly from government,
but from private sector.
But from private sector. But I share a very different perspective on that. I think government must lead. Government must do what it's voted into power to do. Government must do what it's paid the taxes to do. Because the point is that how much work can the private sector do? How much support can they give? How much are they making on their own in order to support communities come out of poverty and all of that?
Yeah.
They are doing their best to a certain extent.
I mean, most of these businesses are here to make profit.
Exactly, and especially in a very unconducive business environment where they are struggling to themselves make profits, break even, pay their workers well and all of that. It will be very difficult for them to have enough money to then want to spend out there on poverty alleviation generally. And you rightly made the point at the start of the conversation that some of those basic infrastructure is something that government must provide, whether it likes it or not.
Yeah.
Roads, for example, the private sector will struggle in terms of helping provide routes and all of that. And I think that the buck obviously stops with government.
Yeah.
And
I've got
and
a
they need to do
toilet
more.
challenge because I had an education conversation with Mr. and Miss Hafa here on the show. And you know, when we talk poverty, we're looking at rural areas and we're thinking, oh, that's where extreme poverty is. Even in the cities. And what Mr. Anis Hafa, for instance, said was, let's identify in Kokombilimle a school that does not have a toilet. Because he thinks that you would find, and there are a few places where you'd find that they don't even have the basic amenities. But is there hope, you know, like these young kids were sharing with Efwa? Do you see hope? Because you have experienced it. You have been to all these places.
Yeah. To a very large extent, a lot of the people in those areas themselves don't have hope, so that then, as to what the future holds. They think this is our condition, we are okay with it, we are living in it.
Are they thinking that help could come?
They've had repeated promises which have not been fulfilled, except that they will still go ahead and make those demands that government still steps in. But after hearing all of those repeated promises, they appear not to have a lot of hope that things will really change going forward. The sad aspect is that, and again, this is my perspective, it may be unfair, but I think they are not doing the best, you know, on their part either to help deal with the problems of poverty that they are facing. For example, a community called Sarkwili that I visited in the Savilugun Anton district. This is a community with very vast tourism potential. So we understand that it used to be a major slave market during the colonial era. So a very large baobab tree, and after the slave trade was ongoing, you could see the stickings from the metallic objects and all of that in the tree. There's the signboard there. You could see all the bangles that were used to, bangle the slaves and all that. And occasionally, people visit there, foreigners come there, they visit there, even people, Ghanaians visit there and all of that. And you are thinking that this could be developed into a tourism site and people come there, pay money, and the money that is earned can be used to develop the community.
You're thinking the community could take that
could.
up and develop it?
They could find a way around it, even if government and the district assembly is not helping them do that. But they are not doing it. So people come there, they walk around, they watch.
For free.
For free. Walk around and watch for free. And people who are generous enough then goes ahead to maybe give them something small to make use of. But it can be streamlined and it can be popularized. Build a small website. Of course, that may need a bit of outside ingenuity to do, but build a small website and popularize it. Making that place alone a tourism site can help develop there, and will be raised money to help provide some of the basic needs. But you know, they are not helping themselves to a certain extent. So I, for example, we won't give up on Ghana because we all have hope that things will be better in future. But things look obviously too bad.
How has this journey, because I don't know, is this because you visited more places in one documentary, is that it?
Yes, it was over 4 or 5 days, and we visited like 6 different districts and some of the most
in different regions as well.
In different regions, the northern part and also the Volta region.
Yeah.
I have had the opportunity to experience living in communities like that over extended periods, particularly in the western region, doing volunteer work when I was doing my first degree at the Kenya State. But
so this is not entirely new.
But the reality is that what I saw during this trip is more than I've seen all my life during the time that I spent those periods in the rural communities and all of that. And that's why I have a problem, because then it gives me the impression that things are worse than I had seen in the past, and it gives me the thinking that looks like things are getting even worse. Basic things like road infrastructure, because when we're traveling, and I need to say this, when we're traveling, use the Eastern Corridor Road. The map talked about Eastern Corridor Road. We will see it in the documentary. Vehicles that were trying to use the stretch and were stuck, had gotten accidents because of the poor nature of the road, because carrying several bags of gari, and the vehicles had capsized, you know, and water that was stuck on the roads, and vehicles unable to move and all of that. And you ask yourself, this Eastern Corridor Road has been a campaign tool since 1992. Every government has been fixing it. Every politician has used that stretch at one point in time or the other, because that's the road which connects the northern part of the Volta region and then the northern region. And so you ask yourself, so for the last 20 or 30 years that these politicians have been using this road, have they not seen it? Is no one interested in really fixing it? And you tell yourself, looks like those who are really in charge really don't have the interest of the people there at heart in terms of wanting
I can't wait to see this, but when is it showing?
It's showing on Friday. We're doing a repeat of what we showed on Monday, on Friday at 6:30 on Joy News Exclusive. It's actually in two parts, so that first part is airing this coming Friday at 6:30, and the second part, which focuses on the northern part of the country and some analysis on how we can deal with, for example, the northern-southern poverty gap. All of that also comes up in the second part, showing on Monday at 6:30. So let's all make a date this Friday at 6:30 and on Monday at 6:30 again.
Congratulations to you, though.
Thank you very much. But the bigger congratulations should actually go to the team that helped put it together, Samuel Asante, my cameraman, and then Fifi Komsenu, who helped edit the script, and our driver, Nicholas Ofori. But even the bigger focus should be on those little kids who are struggling to make life. And we all need to put pressure on someone to help deal with some of the problems that they face, particularly with education, because unless we deal with that, the cycle of poverty would obviously continue.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we have to make way for talk now, but Multi TV and HFC Bank, in partnership with Sethi Realty, present an exhibition fair, and is at the Golden Tulip in Kumasi. It's on housing on the 27th to 29th of November 2015. You can visit the Multi TV HFC Habitat Fair to acquire a property and obtain free directives on acquiring your dream property, mortgaging, decoration, maintenance, and home security. Meet industry leaders during the fair who will discuss all relating to acquiring your affordable home and renewable energy. To exhibit at this fair, you can call Multi TV on 054 010 6344 or 050 4011 11945 or 0242 737 631. Sponsors HFC Bank, possible together. Sethi Realty, fair and affordable housing is the basic right for all. Noble Realty, own a noble property today. Multi TV just thrills, and I'm proud of being a trendsetter. I help students change for the better. I train a youth football team in my neighborhood. What makes you stand out? What are you doing to make a difference in your community? The Mobile Hero is touring Ghana. DW and Joy News are looking for local heroes just like you, so you can catch the Hero Mobile crew as we come to your neighborhood. We'll be in Medina live with Kwalkesi. #1 School Park is on the 16th, which is just tomorrow. Nima Market live with VVIP. Chapter O Junction on the 17th of October. Teshi Blow live from Screwface. Live with Screwface. Methodist Park is the place on the 23rd, and live with Gasmila at Labadi La Presby School on the 24th of October. Come rock with the artist, VVIP, Gasmila, Screwface, Kwalkesi. Come and share your story and let us celebrate you. The Hero Mobile is brought to you by Joy News and DW Global Insight for local heroes.